Elon Musk slaughters BBC reporter.
Free speech is meaningless unless you allow people
사실
you don't like to say things you don't like. Otherwise, it's irrelevant. And if at the point at which you lose free speech, it
sensationally
doesn't come
true.
back.
I think the issue some people have is that a lot of people were brought back. I mean, some people were brought back who were previously banned for spreading things like QAnon conspiracies. You have people like Andrew Tate who were brought back, who were previously banned for things like hate speech. Do you think you prioritize freedom of speech
It was
over
like years ago.
misinformation
People can
and
say
hate speech?
Well, you know, who's to say that something is misinformation? Who's the arbiter of that? Is it the BBC?
You're literally asking me.
Yes.
Well, no, you
Who
are
is the arbiter?
you are the arbiter on Twitter because you own Twitter.
Yes, I'm saying who is to say that one person's misinformation is another person's information? At the point at which you say
done research and scientifically agree then it's actually fair.
that there is
You can agree
this is
on.
misinformation, like who is going
But you
to
accept that
decide
misinformation can be dangerous, that it can cause
Yes.
real-world harms, that it can potentially cause...
Yes, and the point I'm trying to make is that the BBC itself has, at times, published things that are false.
Yeah.
Do you agree that that has occurred?
I'm quite sure the BBC have said things before that turn out to not be true.
Correct.
It is,
This
whatever
is
it is,
true.
100-year history, I'm quite sure.
Yes. Even if you
100
aspire
years,
to
I mean,
be accurate, there are times when it
not
will,
that
you
far.
will not be.
We've spoken to people very recently who were involved in moderation, and they just say there's not enough people to police this stuff, particularly around hate speech in the company. Is that
What
something
hate
that you want
speech are
to
you talking
address?
about? I mean, you use Twitter.
Right.
Do you see a rise in hate speech?
I mean,
But just a personal anecdote, like what do you? I don't.
personally, my for you, I would see I get more of that kind of content, yeah, personally. But I'm not going to talk to the rest of for the rest of Twitter.
You
But
see more
personally,
hate speech personally.
I would say I would see more hateful content in that.
Content you don't like or hateful? What do you mean
Don't,
to describe
yeah.
a hateful thing?
It's a
Yeah,
different
I mean,
conversation.
just content that will solicit a reaction, something that may include something that is slightly racist or slightly sexist, those kinds of things.
So you think if something is slightly sexist, it should be banned?
No,
Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying anything. I'm
Well,
saying.
I'm just curious. I'm trying to understand what you mean by hateful content. And I'm asking for specific examples. And if
Look, it's
and you
getting
just
too
said that
far.
if something is slightly sexist, that's hateful content. Does that mean that it should be banned?
Well, you've asked me whether my feed, whether it's got less or more. I'd say it's got slightly more.
That's why I'm asking for examples.
Right.
Can you name one example?
I honestly don't use. Honestly, I
You
don't.
can't name a
actually-
single example.
I'll tell you why, because I don't actually use that for you feed anymore because I just don't particularly like it.
But you
And
said
actually,
you-
a lot of people are quite similar. I only
Well,
I only look
hang on a
at my
second.
following.
You said you've seen
following.
more hateful
Prepare
content. You
better.
can't name a single example, not even one.
I'm not
This
sure
guy
I've used
says
that feed for the
prepare
last
better.
3 or 4 weeks, and I.
Well, then
I
how
think
did you see the hateful content?
Because I've been using Twitter since you've taken it over for the last 6 months.
Okay, so then you must have at some point seen for you hateful content. I'm asking for one example.
Right.
And you can't give a single one.
And I'm saying
Then I say, sir, that you don't know what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Really?
Go.
Yes, because you can't give me a single example of hateful content, not even one tweet. And yet you claimed that the hateful content was high.
well.
That's false.
No,
These are
what I
content.
claimed,
You just lied.
Two centers.
No, what I
There
claimed
are only
was
two centers on the
there are
generals.
many organisations that say that that kind of information is on the rise. Now, whether it has on my
Give me
feed
one
or
example.
not, I mean, right, and
Literally
if you
can't
look at
name
something
one.
like the Strategic
Can you
Dialogue
do it?
Institute in the UK, they will say that. So
Look, people will say all sorts of nonsense. I'm literally asking for a
Right.
single example, and you can't name one.
right, and as I
Here's a
already
point
said, I
to
don't
make.
use that feed. But
Well, then how would you know that?
I don't think this is getting anywhere.
You literally said you experienced more hateful content, and then couldn't name a single example.
Right, and as I said,
Use
That's
a point,
absurd.
uh,
I haven't actually looked at that feed. I
Then
would
how
say,
would you
for a
know this
few
hateful
weeks.
content?
Because I'm saying that's what I saw a few weeks ago. I can't give you an exact example. Let's move on. We only have a
These
certain
are
amount of
semantics.
time.
It's fine.
COVID misinformation. You
Amazing.
changed the COVID misinformation
Has
rules.
BBC changed its COVID misinformation?
The BBC does not set the rules on Twitter, so I'm asking you.
No, I'm talking about the BBC's misinformation about COVID.
It's about
I'm literally asking you about, you
Matabang.
changed the labels, the COVID misinformation labels. There used to be a policy, and then it then disappeared. Why do that?
Well, COVID is no longer an issue. Does the BBC hold itself
guess
at
so,
all
but
responsible for misinformation
BBC really.
regarding masking and side effects of vaccinations, and not reporting on that at all? And what about the fact that the BBC was put under pressure by the British government to change its editorial policy? Are you aware of that?
This is not an interview about the BBC.
Oh, you thought it wasn't?
I see now why you've done Twitter Spaces. I am not a representative of the BBC's editorial policy. I
Yes,
want to make that
better.
clear. Let's talk about something else. You want
I'm
to talk about the
interviewing you
BBC?
too.
All right, let's talk about something else.
You weren't expecting.
This is a basic example of the hospital.